Hello, my name is Tobias Heiler and I'm one of the founders of BrainBoost. In this webinar, I will show you the new Studio dashboard. The Studio dashboard will give you a first glance right after an EEG recording. It will show you different topics like cognition, focus, calmness, creativity, etc. You will have a first idea how the EEG recording can be interpreted. Also, it will give you certain recommendations of training protocols you could start with. Have fun with it.
Okay, so let's get started. The BrainAssistant. As always, we have a lot of different hardware connected to our BrainAssistant. If you know different hardware that you feel like, hey, this might be interesting, feel free to send us a message and we will try to also contact them. Now, the Studio dashboard. Our latest update, it was I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. The Studio dashboard was already included in that, and I know I received a lot of emails on that, and today I'm going to explain a little bit about the new dashboard, how to use it, and how can you use it effectively to also get a very fast overview over what is going on with data. Now, what is the dashboard about? The dashboard is supposed to give an immediate overview prior to a report. So usually, or before, you had to do a recording, an EEG recording, and then create a report. So to see how is the theta beta ratio, high beta beta ratio, to get an idea how does the EEG data look like when interpreting it. The dashboard is before you even create a report, you should already have an idea how the client's EEG can be interpreted. It makes sense once I will share my BrainAssistant with some examples. Also, it's supposed to give some understandable topics. I will come to that part. So maybe or not maybe for a lot of clients, it is hard to tell them, hey, your theta beta ratio is not very good. Then I say, okay, what is theta? What is beta activity? What is that? Then you have to explain what are brain activities, what are frequency bands. And now we, on purpose, covered a few EEG categories with some topics that we gave names that are understandable. You will also be able, or you're able to see EEG categories in your dashboard. So if you are more skilled, then you can also see more depth analysis. And it shows you the FFT spectrum analysis. And on top of that, the Studio dashboard gives you protocol recommendations. So all of that, we're going to watch this in a second in my BrainAssistant. But before that, topics. Just to filter this out, we have 6 different topics. There might be new ones coming, there might not. I think this is a pretty understandable way to displaying some categories or some topics to your clients and to yourself. So we decided to set up 6 categories, and they have names like cognition, focus, calmness, creativity, regeneration, and sensory processing. And all of them consist of EEG data together with cognitive tests. So for example, if we take a look at focus, I think everybody understands, hey, your focus is in a yellow area, so less, it's up to 100 points. The more points you get, the better. So if you are in the 42 area, this means focus, there can be still a lot of things we can do and train this. And the focus category consists of EEG data. For example, we check out your theta activity, theta beta ratio, but also cognitive tests. I will come to that part in a second. So maybe your EEG data is not super perfect, but some people can make up for that by performing under pressure. They have a good feeling or a good sense of when they need to perform. The brain really turns up. And so maybe the focus is not completely bad. And this is why we combined EEG data with cognitive tests to really cover multiple sides of topics, so you don't just say, oh yeah, today you had a lot of theta, so bad for you. These categories, they also cover not just one-sided point of view. So some people say, I'm specialized on ADD, so I just want to check out the EEG based on that. So just focus. No, you get a broad overview of the entire brain or the entire person. To understand this, I just want to say a few words about our cognitive tests. EEG first, of course, and then cognitive tests. EEG, sorry, Aufnahme, recording. So depending on what hardware you use, you have a certain amount of channels. Of course, best case scenarios, you have 19, 24 and more channels, because then we have all the channels, all the positions we can cover, and then we can check out frontal alpha asymmetry, so F3, F4, we can check out whatever we like. Of course, we also try to design our studio dashboard, our reports, that with less channels, for example, a 3-channel recording or 8-channel recording, we can also cover quite and create quite a few topics. Now, of course, here, for example, we don't have the alpha asymmetry, we don't have C3, C4 Mu rhythm, so there will be some topics missing, or there will be some categories missing in the EEG analysis, but still, you can give it a try depending on what hardware you're using. So you don't always have to aim for that full amount of channels, but of course it is nice to also have all channels covered. Cognitive tests. In our BrainAssistant, there was also a webinar half a year ago or even more. You can perform cognitive tests like the CPT test, for example, where you see a circle popping up, where you then on an X-Pulse controller have to press a button as fast as possible. And if you see a square, you shouldn't press anything. So it measures your reaction time, commission and omission error. So did you press even though you don't had to, or did you not press when you had to? Also, the Stroop test is a test where you have 4 words, colors, and you need to press as fast as possible the correct color. So when there's a name popping up, like the word table, and it's written in blue, you have on an X-Pulse controller press the right arrow to the right side and say, oh, this was blue. If you have the word blue written in blue, you also have to press blue. And if you see the word blue but written in red, you need to press red. So this is a more complex cognitive task. These have nothing to do with EEG, but this is pretty cool. So we can also check out a combination of EEG data and of those tests. We even have 3 more tests that you can give a try yourself if you want to, but this will be a different topic, and you can rewatch another webinar that I recorded. We decided to choose the CPT and the Stroop test. These are very common tests, and as I said and stated here, we can check out reaction time, commission, omission error, and here it's a more complex test, so this also is pretty interesting to see cognitive skills with somebody. Long story short, so when we do an initial consultation, this is usually our flow. You can use those flows in the BrainAssistant that we do. So we perform a 1-minute baseline measurement, eyes open. Sometimes people move, sometimes people have to scratch. And so here we really check out, are people sitting calmly and understand how to just go over the measurement procedure. Then this is what we're going to interpret. 3 minutes eyes open, 3 minutes eyes closed. Then we do the cognitive tests. And then afterwards we see how the brain reacts after a stressful event, eyes open, eyes closed. The minimum you need for all categories would be this. So of course you can use a flow where you skip the last 2 parts with the EEG, you can skip the baseline and say, let's just dive right into it. It's also possible, and I will show you this later, to create or see these topics in the studio dashboard while just having an EEG recording. But it would be pretty cool if you might insert these tests in your routine. It gives more info. It's also understandable to pitch to clients if they say, I don't know what theta and what, the EEG stuff is. But of course, it should be your expertise that you also address this to your clients. Now, finally, let's go. So let me open my BrainAssistant. Here we go. So this is all known. So when you come to the main menu, what you need to do is perform one of those flows. So do a recording. Minimum requirement is EEG, eyes open, eyes closed. Best case is you also have the CPT and the Stroop test. This is what you do here. You record a session over here. Let's say you did the recording. So today is about the studio dashboard. Then you go here in the top left on your client. Now I already have some recordings, so we can use one of those. So here, this is where I took some notes. We don't need to care about that. This is an ADD person, and you can press show details. And few people probably have noticed that this is now a new point of view. If you just installed the BrainAssistant, this is the known point of view. Fair enough. So what do we see here? First of all, with clicking this button up here, we can clear this of the comment section. And now it's a broader overview. And what do we see here? So we see, and this was real-time calculation. So it's right away, it's there. What we see is we see those 6 topics. And if you hover, so you just move your mouse, you don't have to click, for example, on focus, it will give you a text. And the text is already a description of what is focus. I mean, of course, you can explain focus to a person, and what is here, what are a few hints how to improve your focus. If you go on cognition, it's a different text box. Now notice, these topics, they consist of certain subtopics. Here, for example, it says CPT should press reaction time. So when you saw a circle, you were supposed to press. Also, you see focus score, theta beta ratio. So you see everything, and this is from red to yellow to green to blue. You are supposed to collect as many points as possible. So 100 would be the best case scenario. For example, here, alpha regulation score, eyes open to eyes closed, has 100 points. So this category, for example, is maxed out. This person really performed well in this one. While, for example, CPT commission error, we're in the red-green, in the yellow-green area, room for improvement. Now, these topics, they are calculated with, not every topic is calculated by all the measurement factors we have here. So when I hover, for example, on focus, see what happens. We now only see 6 categories out of all of those. And so we now see focus is just taking account these categories. So for example, Stroop reaction time. Here we go. Focus score theta. Here we go. Focus score alpha 1, alpha 2 ratio, and then the other 3 down there. So in this case, focus, we, for example, don't care about alpha regulation score, eyes open, eyes closed. Of course, the entire brain needs all functions to function, but these topics are supposed to summarize what is really, really essential for a good focus. So here you see the combination of EEG data and of those cognitive tasks, cognitive tests. So you can hover here and check out, okay, what is relevant, for example, for calmness. For calmness, we would need an alpha regulation score. So when you have eyes open and eyes closed, there should be a reaction. So alpha appearing, more alpha appearing when eyes closed compared to eyes open. So everything plays into certain topics. And this is pretty cool. If you want a fast overview, this person seems to have problems with focusing. Okay, we have some categories that are at 0, but for example, Stroop, good reaction time. So I can also tell the client right away after they performed a flow, a first assessment with them, hey, you were pretty good at the test. Very nice. So when it comes to the point to perform, you can deliver. But when you have to sit there with your eyes open and not do anything, the EEG measurement, there we see your brain is switching to energy saving mode, for example. So this is pretty cool to also get a first glance at what we just saw. So these are the topics, and these are the subscores. What else do we see? We see here on the left side an FFT analysis. So for people who are familiar with FFT, this should be pretty straightforward. At the bottom here, we see the frequency bands, and then here we see the amplitude. For example, purple is delta, then theta, alpha 1, alpha 2, low beta, mid beta, high beta, and gamma. And we see here, even though this is a measurement from a 24-channel recording, we just see the most prominent positions for a first glance. Studio dashboard is for, you have one page and you can see the most important things. So we can do in-depth analysis, of course, somewhere else. But here we see ZZ, eyes open, eyes closed. So for example, we see here eyes closed, there's a huge alpha 1 spike peak, and here more theta. PZ, eyes open, eyes closed, and FZ. So we see just these 3 positions. If you want to check out more, this would be more in-depth analysis. So we could also check out more with our eyes open, for example, and see all the positions we recorded, whatever we like. But this is not what the studio here, the overview, the studio dashboard is about. So here you can have a first idea. Here you see more details. Here you have a broad overview. And now a question in many cases in neurofeedback is, what should I train? And this is what we see here. Based on this analysis, we can see, okay, it says left hemisphere activation, C3. Okay, makes sense. This person seems to have problems focusing and generally cognition. So meaning also a part focusing, a part including functions like memory, reasoning, problem solving, decision making. So basically a broad overview of a general function. So makes sense to do a focus protocol. Also here it says recommended. Also a recommendation is also a focus protocol, but with 10 channels. So you see a more intense area of interest that we measure. And then central SMR C3, C4. Now maybe you say, I only want to place one electrode. This is more than enough. It takes less time, and maybe it's more expensive to, or I don't even have an amplifier that has so many channels. So here you can just say, let's get rid of 5+ channels. Let's maybe even get rid of 2 to 4 channels. And now it only displays one channel training protocols. Here, C3, ZZ, PZ. You see PZ, yellow area, it's not the perfect fit based, very important, on this measurement. It's only a snapshot of the moment, of course. If a client is super tired in the measurement process, of course it will be a different result than the next day, but still. Or you can say, let's add 2 to 4 channels, or just display 2 to 4 channels. So here it gives you a pretty fast recommendation. Of course, don't always pick the one that's on top. You can always think along and say what might be beneficial for my client. So this is also a function we have here. We have training protocol recommendations. Now, what very important is, these categories, they take into account, they need to be clean, so clear of artifacts. So if we go to EEG data, we see here artifact, marked artifacts. Usually when you do a recording, the artifacts are, well, let's check out a client that has a lot of artifacts here. So I have, of course, on purpose, few recordings. So we see here EEG data, and at the bottom line, you see all these red marks here with my mouse cursor. With eyes closed, there's a lot of artifacts. So these are already marked. The first time you do a recording, it's not automatically marking artifacts. So it will look like this. Here, remove. It will look like this. And now let's check out 15. So check out the topics 15, 19, 38. Now let's mark some artifacts, and I'll be super extreme. 50. Now it's calculating. It's marking the artifacts. Will take a little. Now almost everything is thrown out. And now we will see they look completely different. This was too much artifact rejection. So make sure if you mark these artifacts, usually 100 is a pretty good value. You have to do this once to mark artifacts. It will calculate this in real time. You see it's very fast. It will mark the artifacts. Now let's say you did a recording and you didn't mark artifacts, but you say, you know what, I want to generate an auto report anyways. When you generate an auto report, this automatically mark artifacts is always default. So if you once create an artifact, it will also mark the EEG data. So you don't have to do this extra if you create an artifact and report anyways. Yes, how does this dash? So here we have now all 6 topics, and we have all these subscores. If you only have 3 channel recording, for example, this is what I did here, FZ, ZZ, PZ. If, and we see this here, the EEG data, just 3 channels, and I did not even perform any cognitive tests, this is how it's going to look like. We now have here regeneration and sensory processing, NAN, this means not a number. So we see when I hover, it has 3 EEG categories, arousal score, this one and this one, but it simply doesn't have enough to calculate this. This is important, of course. At some point, we also need to say, if you only have 1, 2, 3 of those subscores, and there's no CPT, there's no Stroop, or there's not even enough EEG recordings, then we need to say, okay, maybe it's only possible to calculate 4 out of these 6 categories. Very important also, you need the correct positions also. So if you record just T3, T4, and FP1, and these sub-scores, they don't take these into account, then nothing will be here. So it needs to be the right positions. Now, what else can you do? There's one button I didn't press. So this is for a first glance, but here, generate auto report, you will be able to create different reports. What I would recommend is the full report. The classic report shows you, does not show you these topics. I think these topics are very nice to display to a client. So I would go with full report. Now it's rejecting all the artifacts, marking the artifacts. This might take a little bit, so please be patient. This might take 10, 15, 20 seconds, maybe more, depending on how many artifacts. So please be patient when generating the report. Now, let's give him, here we go. And now this is how the report now looks like. I'm zooming out. It's a 60+ pages report. So with a page over here, then some insights on what did we measure, who did it. And then we have these topics. And we basically have the same overview. It's just arranged differently. So here the category, for example, focus, just shows the 6 subscores that were being taken into account to calculate focus. So I think it's a very nice overview. You can print out these 1, 2, 3 pages with all these 6 topics. You can also print out the disclaimer, of course, but this is, I think, very understandable. Also, when you print out, for example, on these pages, and here CPT, the test with the circle popping up or the square, you can also print this out and then draw a circle and a square and say, you remember this was that task? Ah, yeah, sure, I remember. Stroop was with the 4 colors. So you draw those 4 colors and they say, ah, yeah, sure, I remember. And this is pretty cool because, for example, in this case, we see that in those tasks, the person did pretty well. Also, focus score, I will come to that, alpha, did also pretty well. So it's more the theta where you don't perform well. The theta beta ratio is pretty off, and alpha 1 to alpha 2 ratio is also pretty off. So the problem here appears to be more theta and maybe alpha 1. So this is a hint where the rest looks pretty fine. So we have an approach to say, okay, we should go into that direction. So also this strength up to not weakness, but also room for improvement. I think this is pretty fair to level this. And also you can read out what's written here to explain the category, the topic. Also, what can you do besides neurofeedback? And now if you want to go into detail, but I'm just barely touching it, it's about the studio dashboard here. You can, for example, press focus score. You see my mouse cursor, it's changing. And if you press focus score, check, it's now jumping. You see here on the right side, when I zoom out, it's now jumping to this subtopic or subscore, sorry, and it now shows you, okay, what's up with theta. If you want to go back, press overview, tick, and now we're up here. And if you want to check out something else like theta beta ratio, you can just jump to the theta beta ratio. This was 24 channel recording, so it also has the full heat maps, which is pretty cool, and of course some references. This is how the studio dashboard forms into a report. And this is pretty cool now, with the studio dashboard, what you can do in the BrainAssistant is, let's say you did a recording, okay? So now we have all the EEG data and the tests, and now the client is still on the EEG, of course. What you can do now is, you can say, okay, let's start a training session. This looks different here, because I have in the background, I have an EEG running. So you see here, now there's an EEG running. I could now start an application, maybe even put this manual, auto threshold, whatever you prefer. There's pro and cons for that. And then the client says, okay, now I get my first training session, maybe a shorter version. And simultaneously, while the training is running, you can go into the recording of the client and go into the studio and then check out while the training is happening, okay, what are the first results? Okay, this, that. So you don't even need to generate a report and go through all the PDF and stuff. You have it here right on in front of you, and this is pretty cool. And also check out, okay, next time this might make sense. So you have a very fast overview with the studio dashboard while the training is running, so you don't have to go through all the pages and go through. Of course you can go through the raw EEG and everything, but I think this is very nice, and we worked a very long time on that to make it appealing and to make it understandable. Let's go back to my beautiful slides, of course. So hopefully this makes sense. It's an immediate overview prior to a report. Understandable topics, the names like focus and calmness. I think everybody can understand this. You see the EEG categories yourself. You see the FFT spectrum if this is relevant for you, and some first protocol recommendations. Of course, be careful with that. It's automatically created, so you need to take into account how is sleep quality, what did the client report to you. So of course there's more to that than just follow this, but it is, I think, a very nice feature. Yes, so we talked about this. You have the subscores, you have the topics, and here, this is very important to filter also how many channels do you want in the protocol recommendation, and you see the spectrum of the frontal, central, and parietal lobe. When you hover on top of a topic, it also gives you the first hints, but I think this is also self-explanatory when you work with that. There will be an update available, hopefully it will be before Christmas, but of course we're very busy here. This will automatically put the reports and all these flows that I just showed you here, these flows that you can perform in the BrainAssistant. There's another webinar on it. This will automatically upload this to your BrainAssistant. I know at the moment, let's stop this session. At the moment, you need the .bata files to import it, so you need to press import and then import the correct report, the correct flow, and we will try to implement this automatically in your BrainAssistant, that you have this one here, what you see here, this one automatically in your BrainAssistant, also the latest version automatically with every update. So last webinar I also promised something else, and this will also come now, finally, the NeuroRacer update. I know I addressed it last webinar, but we found a few problems with it. Now we solved everything, and the NeuroRacer will now have new worlds, and these worlds, they are worlds where you basically race through other applications we have. So this one, it looks very familiar, is from the Focus Master. So this is pretty cool, and this is from the Pirate Islands and 7 Seas. So we have quite a lot of clients that said, wow, cool, I know this world. It's from the monk going up and down. So it's pretty cool to combine these worlds, and we are probably going to work a little more on that to overlap them, because people really enjoy that. So give that a shot and use NeuroRacer. It's quite a nice game. Yes, next webinar will be 2025. Wow. It will be end of January. You will get an invite for that, and it will be about the Auto Report 2.0. So I gave you a little sneak peek on that. I will explain a little more why we did what, how we thought that through. I also show you, I didn't show you this time, what else you can read out there, considering the CPT and Stroop test, maybe, or other tests. So also please perform those. And it's a very nice report. We worked hard on it, and so far our clients really enjoy that one. So yeah. Hopefully you will be there. Few words, I'll keep it short. I hope you have a good time towards the end of the year. Don't work too hard, finish all your stuff, and then take some time to also relax. Thank you for participating, and yeah, I hopefully see you next year.